We're going to play a little game of true or false, fantasy or reality is what we used to call it. But instead, we're going to play a little game of buy or sell. Rafael Devers had a press conference and basically said, I ain't moving off third base. I'm a third baseman. I won't play DH. I won't play anywhere else. Alex Bregman was just signed. So how's this going to work out? Buy or sell, George? Devers will start more games at third than Bregman this season. Is that a buy or sell?
Yeah, Devers is a horrific third baseman. All right, he's bad. I think he ranks dead last in the league here. I think Cora is going to talk to Devers. Apparently, they are close. He says, listen, you got to move, buddy. I'm sorry. You got to move. We're a better team with Bregman at third.
I think he's dug in here, man. I don't know. I know that there was a report a few days ago that they were talking about it and, sort of working things out. But I think in the end, cooler heads will prevail. But I don't know when that's going to be. I'm going to buy this. I'm going to say that Devers starts like 90 games at third base this season. And I think that'll probably be the compromise here. I think that Bregman will start some, Devers will start some. Bregman's still a Gold Glove third baseman at this stage of his career. It doesn't really add up. The other thing that happened is over the course of Big Papi's career, he moved off first base, he went to DH, and Big Papi was Devers, right? I mean, pretty similar in stature there. But Devers just seems to be really dug in on this. I think if it was going to happen, George, we would know by now. And it hasn't. We just heard that it may. So I am going to buy. I don't think Devers plays 150 at third base or even 140 or anything like that. But I do think he plays more than Bregman at third. I think that they have a compromise where they play both.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to NewsWire. Adam Kaufman in for Craig Mish. Today, we've got you for the next hour here on SportsGrid. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have multiple guests on the way. Obviously, given the time of year, the madness of March, we will get into a lot of college basketball over the course of the next few segments, hit on some other sports betting headlines across the country, and maybe if we have time, we'll mix in a little bit of football at the end of the show because, of course, free agency continues. There are always rumblings of trades. Where's Cooper Kupp going to land? Nice slate in the NBA tonight. It's all on the table. So thank you for being here with us. Let's start. I mentioned sports betting news across the country. Well, congrats to Illinois, of course. This is a big one right here, as Bet365 is the 12th online sports book to go live in the state of Illinois, and just in time for March Madness as well. Illinois, one of the largest online sports betting markets in the entire country, last fall became the fourth state after New York, New Jersey, and Nevada to eclipse $40 billion in all-time handle. That is 40 with a B, folks. Huge, huge number. Incredibly exciting news, of course, for Illinois, and hopefully more and more and more states continue to file suit or follow suit, and we have ourselves a universal sports betting phenomenon across the country. I know it makes things a lot more fun for you out there watching and listening, certainly for me sitting in this chair as well. Now, before we get to a whole lot on the college basketball front, let's start in the pros. One quick note. More bad news for the San Antonio Spurs. That's right, De'Aaron Fox, who, of course, had been acquired by San Antonio back at the deadline from Sacramento after having a great start there with Sacramento, had averaged about 25 points per game in that offense in his 45 games. Not quite as good as efficient there with the Spurs, 20 points per, 7 assists. The dimes went up in his 17 games, but sadly, he is done for the remainder of the year, undergoing season-ending surgery. It's a pinky issue, left pinky tendon damage that needs to be repaired. Now, in the big picture, what does this mean for the Spurs? Honestly, not a whole hell of a lot, because obviously after already losing Victor Wembanyama, the superstar of that team, for the remainder of the year a little while back, this team wasn't going anywhere. You consider the NBA's Western Conference standings. This is a Spurs team that was already sitting outside the play-in tournament. And of course, before the creation of this play-in tournament, we'd be talking about the Spurs as a 12th seed in the Western Conference and say, like, their season's over anyway. They're completely cooked. They're not going anywhere. But even with that hope among hope, trying to get themselves into the 10th to qualify, obviously, for the top 8 through the play-in, if I'm not throwing enough numbers at you, it's not going to happen. The Spurs are sitting 26 games out of first, but more notably, still 4.5 games behind that 10th slot currently occupied by Dallas. I mean, you can decide whether or not the Phoenix Suns even have a chance. They've got a better chance, obviously, than San Antonio. So the Spurs season is over. It's on to next year. I do believe that between Fox and obviously Wemby, this is a team that has real aspirations to be dangerous there in that Western Conference in the entirety of the NBA. Sadly, it's just not going to happen this year. So the good news, though, from a betting perspective, if you are someone that invested, be it way back toward the beginning of the year or even mid-season, as this kind of putrid rookie class has evolved in terms of injuries, playing time, what have you, if you do have an investment in Stephon Castle to win Rookie of the Year, he is now the overwhelming favorite. That's where the offense is going to come from. Don't be surprised if he starts putting up 20 points per game. But looking at FanDuel right now, Rookie of the Year odds, Stephon Castle, minus 950. Only a few weeks back, this guy was plus money. Minus 950 to win Rookie of the Year. Jalen Wells of Memphis behind him at 11-1. So really what that tells you is obviously it is not even close. All right. College hoops. We're less than a half hour away from the first game of this busy day. VCU against St. Bonaventure. It's an 11:30 Eastern tip. And then from there, a full day of the madness. I'm talking like 14 hours of basketball before all is said and done. So truly, this is the best time of the year. Let's get into some updates from yesterday, though, and start in the ACC tournament, where this could be debilitating news for the Duke Blue Devils. A lot of people, I know it's chalky to want to take Duke every single year to win the title just because of the pedigree of the program and the name recognition. It's not necessarily to the degree that it once was with Coach K, but look, even without Krzyzewski, it's the Cooper Flagg experience, and he's going to be one and done. He's going to be the first overall pick in the NBA. The question is he going to have the opportunity to finish out his college season? Number one, Duke did beat Georgia Tech after trailing big early, 78-70, but lost Flagg to an ankle injury, and there is a real long shot that he is going to play in this game today against 5-seed North Carolina in the quarterfinals of the ACC tournament. As for UNC, handled Wake Forest with relative ease, 68-59, advanced to the semis. RJ Davis had 23 points. The other side of that bracket that these two teams are aspiring to match up with, Stanford and Louisville yesterday went down to the buzzer. Number 13 Louisville beat Stanford, edged them out by just 2 points, 75-73. Chucky Hepburn's putback at the buzzer lifted his team, and so huge, obviously, for number 2 Louisville. The Cardinals get Clemson next year after the 3-seed dispatched SMU. Was not easy. Another tight one, 57-54. Chase Hunter, 21 points in that one for the number 10 team in the country. So again, could we see Duke get by North Carolina? Does it make more sense to take North Carolina with the points in that matchup later on tonight? We will discuss it, obviously, and then a close one, Louisville and Clemson on the other side. As we move over to the SEC, again, so much action happening over the course of the day. It is, again, quarterfinals here, and we have Texas keeping its season alive, a 94-89 high-scoring win over Texas A&M in double overtime. Sunk a parlay for me. A&M was the last leg that I needed in that one. I mean, went down before some of the other ones came through, but the last leg that I needed, just an A&M win on the money line. They were leading late. Didn't happen for me. Double OT win again for Texas. Arkansas and Ole Miss. You had Sean Padula, three-pointer with 1.3 seconds left as Ole Miss beat Arkansas 83-80. Another high-scoring game and disappointment, but maybe not personally for John Calipari, the head coach of the Razorbacks.
We've been through this all year. Same kind of deal. Either we're up and they come back, or we're down and we come back. We've had 2 games that were duds. Literally 2 games that were duds. I think in our non-conference, we played probably 4 or 5 or 6 teams that'll be in the NCAA tournament out of those 13. And then the games we played against this league, I mean, you tell me how many of these teams are going to be in. So this team has proven it all year, and they've made me proud. I told them this is one of the most rewarding years that I've had. Someone may get mad and say, well, what about this year? What about that year? I'm talking for me as a coach, that all that we were up against, these kids never stopped, and they just kept coming. So it was great to see.
Kentucky edged out, how fitted Kentucky, Calipari's old team, edged out Oklahoma, pardon me. A late one, again, 85-84, Kentucky with that win to extend its season, of course, within this tournament anyhow. Mississippi State and Missouri, we saw number 21, Missouri, with a comfortable 12-point win in that one. So, again, that gives us Auburn, and Ole Miss, Texas and Tennessee, Florida, Missouri, and Alabama and Kentucky. Some fun games ahead of us, obviously, in the SEC. Over in the Big Ten, very quickly here, we will have Michigan State, Oregon, UCLA, Wisconsin, Maryland, Illinois, and Michigan and Purdue. That'll be a tight one. How many of those Wolverines backers want to take the 2.5 today? We will have a lot more coming your way. Stay with us on NewsWire.
The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that rim. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple of thoughts.
18.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. That's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Back on NewsWire, Adam Kaufman, and not alone. We've got Gil McGregor here with us from Sporting News, and thrilled to have him for the next couple of segments so that we can look at a lot of just so much action across college basketball today as we narrow the field to the field of 68, and then the real madness begins. Gil, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing well. Can't be a better time to be a basketball fan. I guess if your team is eliminated, there could be a better time. But otherwise, with basketball all day, it's definitely a fun time to have something to watch throughout the day. It's cool.
Absolutely. I was just saying, we got a game starting in a little bit, and from there, it's basically 14 hours of basketball. So don't leave your houses if you're hanging out at home. Let's start in the SEC here, where it's pretty interesting. Ole Miss and Auburn. We got an 11.5-point spread in this one. Auburn naturally is the favorite, but there's been this notion of late going into the SEC tournament in particular, where it's such a gauntlet, right? It's such a stacked conference to where is it actually a disadvantage to win the conference when you get into the big dance? Is it better for a team like Auburn to, lose, be it today or tomorrow, and get a little bit of rest before the real tournament begins? And so I was talking to some people, and ultimately the question that everyone had was, how seriously is Auburn going to take this game? What do you think?
I think that there's an advantage to it. Ultimately, as obvious as it is, only one team wins the whole thing, right? And when you look back at this season 1 year, 5 years, 10 years down the line, I don't think that you'll ever regret, hey, we went all out to get a trophy, to win an SEC tournament title, and then we missed out on the national championship, because it's so hard to get to the national championship as well. Now, if the player goes down or gets hurt, like we saw at Cooper Flag yesterday, it's not worth risking anything like that. But as long as you feel you're the best team in this conference, and Auburn has proven to be that, and it's no nights off in this SEC, you take it one game at a time. I'm curious to see if there's going to be a little bit of a hangover or a layoff from that break that they got playing early in the first game to start their journey in this SEC tournament. That should be interesting. But as far as trying to win this tournament, you go out there and win and learn how to win a tournament, because you'll have to have another one you'll try to win in a few weeks.
That said, do you expect it to be closely contested, meaning even if Auburn does sneak away with a win here, and we've seen multiple 20-point wins out of Auburn in this matchup this season, is this the time that we take Ole Miss with the points in a double-digit spread?
It's the old rust versus rust argument, right? And again, we saw it yesterday with Duke in that first half against Georgia Tech, a team that finished atop their conference, mostly dominated throughout the conference. But to start the game, they're a little rusty. They're playing a team who's coming off of a win the day before. In the case of Ole Miss, a very emotional win the day before. So they've got a little momentum. Now, that probably runs out 15, 20, 25 minutes into the game. So I think that it stays close in the first half, but then Auburn kind of shows who they are in the second half and pulls away and continues their dominance.
So Tennessee is a 9.5-point favorite on the other side of that bracket against, or in the next matchup, I should say, against Texas, a team that, really had to go all out yesterday in a double overtime win against A&M. I'm inclined to say Tennessee wins this game. I just still don't know if the Vols are able to cover a number like that. How do you see it?
I think this is how much stock do you put into how much Texas had to fight and claw to win these games to get here. They are fighting for their NCAA tournament lives, so they're playing for a lot. And we've seen it before. We saw it last year with NC State. We see teams who continue to fight and claw and just continue to find things in the tank that you didn't think that they were possible of having. Now, Tennessee is a team, you think about the matchup, they're a team that probably matches up well. I think that they will benefit from the rest that they've gotten coming into this game. So I actually do like Tennessee. 9.5 does kind of feel like a lot, but when you think about the fact that Texas really had to go into overtime and do a whole lot to get to this game, I like Tennessee here.
You mentioned rest versus rust, and that's a prevalent conversation across all of these games, obviously, with teams having, buys to this point, at least the better teams. We've been talking about a couple of them. How about in the case of Florida and Missouri? Florida, the 2 seed, hasn't had to play. Missouri had a convincing win yesterday by 12 points against Mississippi State. Who comes out on top?
I like Florida here, and there has something to be said about Missouri taking care of business, not really having to exert that much energy to get that win. Obviously, it's going to be hard to win a postseason game regardless, but I think Florida, their style of play, we've seen it throughout the season. They've really just taken care of business, and I think this is another opportunity for them to do the exact same thing. It feels kind of chalk to pick, the higher seed in all of these games, but Florida has just been so impressive throughout the season. I think they continue that today, and things get interesting probably after today or later in the slate tonight in the SEC.
We've got a 5.5-point spread between Alabama and Kentucky. Clearly, Bama has not played either. Kentucky coming off a survival of 14 seed Oklahoma, 85-84 yesterday. A lot of people, when the brackets are all, shaken out and people are filling them out in their office pools or whatever else, a lot of people are going to take Kentucky just because they've heard of Kentucky year after year after year after year. It's the name recognition. It's not necessarily people who follow the sport closely like you do, obviously. Is this a time that we need to fade Kentucky and invest in just how good Alabama has been throughout the year?
You know what? I'm actually going to go with Kentucky here, not because of their brand recognition or anything like that, but I do put a lot of value in the way that they won yesterday. Now, I know I talked about some teams who did have to fight and claw down to the wire, but a game where you look at the win probability sheet for that game against Oklahoma last night and that one going back and forth, and Kentucky somehow finding a way to win. And I think there is something to be said when you see a team kind of find a little magic in this month of March. Now, the brand maybe does help a little bit, and it's an interesting team. They pretty much had to build it from the ground up after Coach Cal left, bringing in Mark Pope and bringing in a lot of players from a lot of different places. They've won a lot of big games this year, and I actually kind of have a feeling that that trend might continue tonight. They play Alabama. That layoff extends because they play so late at night tonight, and who knows what time that game will actually tip off. And I think some of those things actually work in Kentucky's favor. So if nothing else, they might not win the game, but I think they keep it close and it'll be a battle to the end.
Quarterfinals over in the Big Ten, and we got a fun one between obviously Michigan State and Oregon. It's a 6.5-point spread. Oregon, as we know, handled Indiana yesterday. Michigan State hasn't played, but this is Tom Izzo's time of the year. How do you go against them?
You know, it's tough to go against them, but I will say this Oregon team has won 8 games in a row. Their last loss was against Michigan State at Michigan State, and they're up 14 at half. So now you're at a neutral site. I think they like the matchup. I think they like the opportunity for a little redemption here. So that's something to keep an eye on with this Oregon team. Has some momentum, and they've had a little bit of success against this Michigan State team.
We're just scratching the surface here of the Big Ten, have other conferences to get to, and a boatload of basketball today with Gilbert McGregor hanging out here with us from Sporting News. So stick around. We're going to continue to cover all of it. The rest of this conference, we'll look at the Big East, Big 12, you name it. Picks ahead. Go nowhere. You're watching SportsGrid.
The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that ring. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple of 18.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. That's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun. I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Back on NewsWire, we have Gilbert McGregor here with us from Sporting News, taking a look at a lot of conference play across college basketball today. And let's continue on with the Big Ten as we have Wisconsin and UCLA. So 1.5-point spread. Wisconsin is the favorite after a win yesterday against Northwestern, 7-point win. Look, I maybe know enough to be dangerous in the college basketball streets. Here's what I also, know what you don't know. Here's what I don't know. I don't ever know how to bet Wisconsin. I have a Wisconsin problem that is dated back about a year and a half. I don't invest in every Badgers game, but anytime I do, whether it's on Wisconsin or against Wisconsin, all I know is that when I place the bet, it's going to go the other way. So who wins this game? What is the right way to bet this team?
You know what? You saying that, it does make it feel like a game you may just stay away from and enjoy without any betting interest in it. But I think the hard part with this Wisconsin team is that they're so unlike Wisconsin teams that we've seen in the past. And I feel like I've said that before, but I lean toward them a little bit just because they have been so impressive this year. And you kind of go away from conventional wisdom with this Wisconsin team. UCLA has had some ups and downs this year, but obviously they are where they are, and they have more, for the most part, upheld the standard of that program. But again, you know, when you're in this neutral location, and Wisconsin does have the things that are going for them, just the way that they play offensively, just a different type of flow from this team, and it looks very different from Wisconsin teams of years past. If you had to make me choose, I would slightly lean Wisconsin in this one.
I'll be mindful of that when I'm not placing the bet, just so that I don't screw it up for the people out there that do. Another game that's a virtual pick'em here is Maryland and Illinois. Illinois, as we know, coming off a decisive win yesterday. This one is a virtual pick'em, 1.5 with Maryland, the favorite. It's a good total, 158.5. It's not, you know, Kentucky, Alabama pushing 180, but it's still sizable total right around 160. What do we expect here?
So, you know what? I actually like Maryland a lot in this one, considering it's a pick'em. Illinois, very talented team. Kasparas Giacochionis, like the guy who's come there and is probably going to be a lottery pick. Derek Queen, probably going to be a lottery pick as well. So, going to be a lot of talent in this game. But I think that over the past few weeks, some of the issues that Illinois has, despite their talent, feels like they're having some communication issues, maybe some chemistry issues, which is a tough thing to have at this point in the season. And I expect those issues to show tonight. I know Maryland is probably going to deal with some of the rest versus rust thing as well, but I really do like Maryland in this game, especially in a type of a pick'em situation.
Purdue escaped USC yesterday and now has Michigan as a 2.5-point favorite. And this is one of those games that feels like the public is going to be on Purdue. The sharps are going to be on Michigan with the points with such a narrow spread. How do you see it?
Yeah, Michigan, another team kind of like Illinois at this time of the year. They've been a little bit confusing, right? They've had some really big wins as far as just kind of sneaking by teams, but then the losses that they've had have been really, really big losses. So it kind of feels like either Michigan wins this one in a tight one or Purdue just blows them out of the gym. I don't think it's any in between. So depending on where you lean on this one, you either just go heavy on the Boilermakers, or like, again, if you want to get really sharp with it, Michigan might be the way to go. So it kind of depends on how the matchups break down. I don't really know what to make of it in this one because Michigan has been so confusing, especially in the past few weeks.
As we go over to the Big East, Gil, it's been a really solid year, obviously, for St. John's under Rick Pitino all throughout the year. I started taking them real seriously when I was looking at title odds at 25-1. And, you know, I think they've become, for me, something of a darling entering this tournament. I have real high aspirations, at least for the Final Four for this squad. But what does today's game against Marquette do to dictate performance down the road?
You know, Marquette's got some guys. They've got some experienced guys, but St. John's it's not even a pseudo home game. It's a home game. They're playing at Madison Square Garden, so give them a little bit of advantage with that. And I like St. John's, the fact that they have a lot of size in their starting lineup. I think that's been the big difference for them this year. Every time you start everybody 6'4", 6'5" plus in your starting lineup, that gives you a clear advantage. So the fact that they're playing at home, the fact that they have such a size advantage over most every team they play against, I like St. John's. I like this to continue that resurgence and really build some momentum heading into the big dance. And I think that they can make some noise there as well.
A team that I am not going to fade this time of year, UConn, under, of course, two-time defending champ Dan Hurley. Sure, the roster's turned over quite a bit. Of course, the team has not been as good this year, but a 3.5-point favorite against Creighton and a team that tends to turn it up a level when we get to March.
Yeah, it's hard to go against UConn, especially in the month of March. It's not the team that they've had in years past, but at the same time, this is the time of the year they figure it out and get together. I'm with you right there on that.
You have a favorite play across the Big 12 before we let you go?
Man, you know, Arizona looked good last night. So if I think right off the top of my bat, like Arizona, I think is a team that maybe continues to ride the momentum they had from the win over Kansas last night.
All right, Texas Tech, a 2.5-point favorite against Arizona, whereas BYU and Houston will battle. Houston, 7.5-point favorite. Gilbert McGregor, Sporting News. Gil, thank you so much.
it's made every match so much more enjoyable to watch because you don't get the stinkers, right?
Right. It goes back to these guys being smart. They figured out that if I've got the hammer in my back pocket and I don't relinquish it, we can just play them straight up and win. They figured that out. So it's like, all right, now credit to the people at TGL. Like, no, we need to fix this because the hammer can change the match. And since we fixed it, you're not out of it.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than game time decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Off of the combine this weekend, there's been lots of anonymous sources and position coaches and all these things that sat down in interviews with him. A lot of teams allegedly don't see him as a first-round pick.
Their big mouth that thinks they can do it either. They're embarrassing themselves. They all think they're so smart, everybody in this business. You're all a bunch of drips. Honestly, you don't know who's going anywhere.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Back on NewsWire, and our thanks once again to Gilbert McGregor from Sporting News. A lot of great stuff in the world of college basketball, where it's going to be a fun-filled, hopefully profitable day for people out there. And heed Gil's advice. A lot of good picks in the mix. Got to fire away some of mine during the breaks as well. But as we always do here on NewsWire, I'd like to attack the legal world surrounding sports betting. And here to help us out from the Legal Sports Report is, of course, a frequent guest of the program, Sam McQuillan. Sam, how are you?
Good, Adam. How are you?
I'm doing great. You know, really interested in what we're going to get into here, especially this first story. You've been obviously writing a few articles over the course of the last week and since the last time you were on, but Major League Baseball and its pushback against predictive markets. Now, when it comes to, I know there are so many models out there and algorithms and what have you that people will use to help them with their sports betting. I don't personally have a model that I have created and curated, but there are certainly services that I subscribe to that I like to look at predictive data, and that does absolutely impact the way that I will invest in certain things, because I realize that at the core of a lot of this stuff, you know, you can bet with your heart if you want to. It's not generally a good way to make money. It's a numbers game, a lot of this stuff, whether it's going, you know, toward or against the market or just sort of, you know, leaning into the value of a certain play, what have you. What's MLB's problem ultimately with issues with integrity and the pushback against people wanting to use this type of approach toward their wagering?
Yeah. The sort of the genesis of the MLB's argument, and kind of everybody who's against these new prediction models we've seen pop up. These, of course, are the things that look like sports betting and function like sports betting, but technically do not want to be regulated as sports betting. These are the prediction markets that companies like Kalshi, Crypto.com, even Robinhood, and another one we'll talk about later, have shown interest in essentially allowing people to buy into a position of whether or not a team will win something. We saw this first pop up during the Super Bowl when Kalshi and Polymarket, which have become very well known for allowing basically election betting, but it's doing it in a way that where it's trading instead of actual betting, so they're not subject to the same laws. So they've popped up, and you have organizations like Major League Baseball, as well as a lot of the gaming industry, have weighed in ahead of this roundtable that's coming up, where the Commodity Future Trading Commission is going to basically try to get all their ducks in a row and figure out how to regulate this. Is this sports betting? is this market investing? Is it not? And what the MLB is saying right here is, if you allow this kind of betting to exist that is not technically subject to the same rules and laws and regulations that our sportsbook partners are, we think it puts the game at risk. We think basically it allows this market to thrive legally where people are not, adhering to the same rules and regulations. Of course, we've had a number of scandals in sports pop up throughout this legal sports betting era. Last year it was Shohei Ohtani's interpreter was involved in something sketchy, and college basketball, there's been a bunch. But all this stuff gets brought to the light because we have these rules and regulations for sports books. And what the MLB is coming out saying here is, if we're allowing this to exist without the same rules and regulations for sports books, we're really worried it can impact our game and open up the door to some bad actors. The CFTC is going to be holding the roundtable later this month, it's expected. So we'll see if we get more leagues joining in. But really interesting that a league is actually chiming in here on the future of this very controversial, recent kind of alternative to sports betting that doesn't want to be regulated the same way.
And of course, one of those books that you alluded to, DraftKings, where its CEO, Jason Robbins, has commented recently on the prediction markets. He's bullish on these prediction markets and is, watching actively just where all of this goes from a legal standpoint to potentially add this to the DraftKings Sportsbook. What do you expect to see happen here?
Yeah, it's really interesting because DraftKings is one of those companies that basically fought for years to get sports betting legal. They started off as a fantasy sports platform, and they've put in all this work, all this money, all this investment. You have to go to the states and get legalized, send them fees, taxes, everything. But now you have this alternative model that's popped up where you don't have to do any of that, at least so far. You can be in all 50 states and offer a product very similar to sports betting that is, again, not subject to the same rules, taxes, regulations. So initially when this popped up, you had investors thinking about FanDuel, thinking about DraftKings, thinking about BetMGM, these companies, seeing this as increased competition for them that was not subject to the same rules. But now what you have here is it came out this week that DraftKings has actually filed to do this same prediction model where they would be essentially taking bets, but not legally taking bets. It's allowing people to buy into an investment. So you alluded to Robin's comments. He said in the past, kind of on the fence, like, oh, it's something we're looking at. We see it as more of an opportunity than a risk. So if in fact these markets are allowed to persist, we see a company like DraftKings already wanting to get ahead of the game. We saw a similar thing with fantasy sports last year when pick'em models were under scrutiny. The game's popularized by Prize Picks and underdogs, which a lot of people were saying is basically just sports betting. DraftKings got in on that as well, offering a similar product. So it's no surprise to see them getting ahead on prediction markets as well. Again, this would allow them to basically offer sports betting in states like Texas, California, Florida, states that don't have it, where there's a huge market for it. So it's no surprise to see them getting into it, but it will be very interesting to see how it all checks out at the end of the day. We'll have to see what the CFTC says.
And if and when, I guess I should say, one of the major books like a DraftKings gets involved with this, does it then become kind of a, follow the leader, floodgates open, everyone else can jump in? I mean, you have another book like FanDuel, obviously, who we reference here all the time, that's at that same level, but then some of the other maybe lesser distributed, lesser known books that, are going to be able to jump in and be opportunistic with this?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of those, if you say this is okay, we're not just going to let our competition do it. We're all going to do it. And I think one of the ways, one of the reasons that is because it's so easy. We saw companies like Kalshi and Crypto.com basically just flip a switch before the Super Bowl, and they took hundreds of millions of dollars on the game versus a company like BetMGM, for instance, that's just spent $300 million on an investment to try to make their product better. If you can just do this easily and launch in the States without doing all of that legwork, it's a no-brainer. FanDuel has come out and said that we want to keep in mind that these are much more rich products we have on our platform. You can do parlays, you can do tons of things on these sports books that so far you can't do on these prediction markets. But again, they're very new, and we don't even know if they're technically going to be legal yet. So we'll have to see how it all shakes out.
From a sports betting standpoint overall, Sam, look, we enjoy it. It's why we're here. It's why we have this content. We love to be in the space and to have a little skin in the game, a little action, obviously. And, sometimes you always want to be able to curb yourself more than anything else, which is why all of these books will offer, internal options to You could limit your deposits, the amount of time you spend on an app, whatever types of limits you can put on yourself are right there for you in terms of just integrity and safety and gaming health, all of it. And it's great that these things are offered. But what other sort of safe guardrails could be on the way with the sports betting landscape?
Yeah, we saw two lawmakers this week, no coincidence, ahead of March Madness, which is obviously one of the biggest betting events of the year. You're going to see your television flooded with ads if you haven't already. These two lawmakers, Paul Tonko and Senator Richard Blumenthal, reintroduced a bill that they tried to get passed last year called the Supporting Affordability and Fairness with Every Bet Act. It essentially would add guardrails on sports betting so they could no longer offer college player props, which we've already seen a number of states ban and an increasing number move towards. It would limit the use of advertising between the hours of 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. to, again, try to restrict its impact on the public. And it would also not allow sportsbooks to use, or it would limit their use of AI technology in terms of how they serve bets. So if I'm a Knicks fan who always bets on the Knicks, the sportsbook uses AI technology to know that and cater me bets. So I don't think this act will go anywhere. That's the big takeaway. But it is a big measuring stick that the federal government wants to, push this out here and try to promote this. And sportsbooks definitely have to stay ahead of all the responsible and fair gaming practices. So no surprise that they're pushing this again ahead of March Madness, but here we go.
Sam McQuillan is from Legal Sports Report. Sam, always a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Adam.
It's made every match so much more enjoyable to watch because you don't get the stinkers, right?
Right. It goes back to these guys being smart. They figured out that if I've got the hammer in my back pocket and I don't relinquish it, we can just play them straight up and win. They figured that out. So it's like, all right, now credit to the people at TGL. Like, no, we need to fix this because the hammer can change the match. And since we fixed it, you're not out of it.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Off of the combine this weekend, there's been lots of anonymous sources and position coaches and all these things that sat down in interviews with him. A lot of teams allegedly don't see him as a first-round pick.
Their big mouth that thinks they can do it either. They're embarrassing themselves. They all think they're so smart, everybody in this business. You're all a bunch of drips. Honestly, you don't know who's going anywhere.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Our thanks once again to Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report. Make sure you check out all of his articles on Legal Sports Report's website. We're going to go back now to college basketball because 'tis the season March. What could be better? As we narrow the grouping to the field of 68 and get a look come Selection Sunday, just a couple days from now, at what the brackets look like. And the real fun begins. We still need conference winners, obviously, including in the jam-packed ACC, where you have Duke and North Carolina matching up today. And sitting in the arena, the home of the ACC tourney in Charlotte, just waiting for hours upon hours for the fun to get started. We go to our next guest here. We welcome in Josh Graham from WSJS. Josh, how are you?
I left this building at around 2 o'clock in the morning, and now we're back at it again. And you got the best rivalry in college sports, and then you got a top 15 matchup. For all the talk about the ACC being down, and for their standards, they are. That's a pretty darn good doubleheader for tonight.
Look, the last thing that Blue Devils fans wanted to see yesterday was Cooper Flagg in a wheelchair, obviously. And, what does it mean going forward, long-term, short-term? And when I say long-term, I mean the NCAA tournament. I don't obviously mean beyond this year. Beyond this year, it's see you later, pal. Enjoy the NBA. It's a one and done. But will we see him again this year to begin with? That's what Duke fans are worried about, because this is supposed to be the year when you've got such an insane talent on your team that you go out and chase a title. And the ACC tournament win, that's not a big deal. So how conservative ultimately is Duke with Flagg and just in general with this tourney, to where maybe a little bit of rest would benefit this team? I know you're not going to go out and throw a game here, Josh, but UNC escaping with a win as a 7.5-point dog, I don't think would surprise anybody.
I don't think so, because they want to clinch an NCAA tournament appearance. But in terms of being conservative, when Cooper Flagg is healthy, he's going to play. And one of the things that's been impressive about Duke is not just that they've won all these games down the stretch, but they were murdering teams the last month of the season. Like, they had a stretch where they won 4 games in a row by at least 30 points, and in 5 of 6 down the stretch. And a big part of the reason that is, it's just this aggressive approach that they have, and that's instilled by this coaching staff. When Tyrese Proctor goes down, with only 1 practice from a Saturday to a Monday game, they throw him into the lineup less than a week after the injury from Miami to a Wake Forest game. And then Malik Brown threw him into a game without, only practicing 1 or 2 games, the regular season finale against North Carolina. So with that mindset, Cooper Flagg, he wants to play. Like, I was sitting right behind the Duke bench when it happened yesterday. He got hurt, and he comes back out to the bench, and he sits in his seat, and assistant coach Chris Carrawell comes up to him and says, "How you feeling?" And he goes, "Coach, I'm doing good. I just can't walk on it." It's like, well, that's kind of an important deal, Cooper. So I wouldn't expect him back in this tournament. John Shire, if you read between the lines between you saying, he's pretty clear that they're probably not going to have him back. It looked like a high ankle sprain, but they're going to play in Raleigh in all likelihood in the first and second round next week as a 1 seed in the tournament. So you probably don't need him in a 1/16 on a Friday, but can you get him back for a Sunday? The odd thing about it is Duke now has Cooper Flagg's going to be the number 1 pick, and Duke now has not 1, not 2, but 3 number 1 picks in the last dozen years or so, last 15 years, who had injuries towards the end of the year, and we didn't know if they'd be ready for the tournament. Zion had the shoe deal in 2019. Kyrie Irving got hurt early in the year in 2011 and didn't return until the Sweet 16, a game that Duke lost against Arizona. So Cooper Flagg, maybe next Sunday is what you should be circling. See if he can be back for that game with a high ankle sprain, it seems.
And look, if Danny Ainge is to be believed, he would have taken Jason Tatum at number 1, and that's another guy that dealt with some injuries there in that lone season at Duke. So you're right, there's an unfortunate pattern here. All right, let's say that Cooper Flagg does return, even if, like you said, it's not until the Sunday, but he's not 100%. What's Duke's future this season with a hampered or even without Flagg?
Here's the scary thing. Con Knippel's been projected to be a top 10 pick, and if you look at the numbers, it might not back it up. He wasn't first team All ACC, for example, but then Cooper goes down, and in the second half of that game alone, he was close to 20 points in the second half, and he had 6 assists in the second half, 5 rebounds. Like, he, dare I say, not a smaller in stature, but looked a lot like Cooper Flagg out there, and when it comes to some of the ball handling. So I think people are going to be surprised tonight how good Duke looks without Cooper Flagg, and a lot of it has to do with Con Knippel.
What do you think of today, ultimately, for people that want to invest in this game? Because, again, it's not of the utmost importance for Duke. It's much more important for North Carolina. I don't think anyone would be shocked, just given the level of talent. You just mentioned, some of it, obviously, for Duke, if the Blue Devils go out and win this game. But How close is it? Do we invest in North Carolina at plus 7.5?
No, I wouldn't touch that, but there are two odds I do like. On FanDuel Sportsbook, I saw that there was team totals that just released, and North Carolina over 72.5 seems to be the right play there, just because the last time they met on Saturday, when Cooper only played about 8 minutes of the first half, North Carolina scored 41 points, and a lot of it was due to Cooper not being on the floor, and Tyrese Proctor, who's usually known for his defense, having to be in a more of a scoring role, and Sion James the same way. And when Cooper returned in the second half, North Carolina didn't score all that much. North Carolina has been lighting it up the last few games from three, and they need the win tonight. So I think investing in North Carolina's points makes a lot of sense, even though a lot of games here in Charlotte have gone under. North Carolina's had success shooting the ball. And Sion James, you might see his role pick up. I think he only needs to hit 1-3 on the prop tonight. He attempted 5 yesterday, made 1. I think Sion James is bound for a bounce-back game. Tyrese Proctor, you might think, could have a lot more production offensively with Cooper being out, but a lot of those props are probably going to be overpriced.
Josh, only about 30 seconds. We could just as easily today be looking at Stanford SMU on the other side of the bracket, but instead it is Louisville against Clemson, a game that's a virtual pick'em. Who do you back?
I like Louisville. I like Louisville just because I think they've been playing stronger over the last month of the season. We'll see what happens. That's a toss-up game, but I think Louisville, a team that's never won the ACC along with Clemson, they're the side.
Josh Graham from WSJS, and hanging out, waiting for these games to start much later tonight. Enjoy them, have fun, make some money, all of it. We'll talk to you again here on NewsWire.
It's made every match so much more enjoyable to watch because you don't get the stinkers, right?
Right. It goes back to these guys being smart. They figured out that if I've got the hammer in my back pocket and I don't relinquish it, we can just play them straight up and win. They figured that out. And so it's like, all right, now credit to the people at TGL. Like, no, we need to fix this because the hammer can change the match. And since we fixed it, you're not out of it.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than game time decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Off of the combine this weekend, there's been lots of anonymous sources and position coaches and all these things that sat down in interviews with him. A lot of teams allegedly don't see him as a first-round pick.
Their big mouth that thinks they can do it either. They're embarrassing themselves. They all think they're so smart, everybody in this business. You're all a bunch of drips. Honestly, you don't know who's going anywhere.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of great stuff from our guests here on this program. We had Gil McGregor. We obviously had Sam McQuillan most recently joining us, Josh Graham, and hopefully you heeded their advice across the board. A lot of insights there from Sam sandwiched in between. But it is time here on NewsWire for our last licks. All right, so for all of you tough macho guys out there that are watching the WNBA and saying, I can take her, she's not that good, here's your opportunity to prove it. All right, the Los Angeles Sparks, I love this, looking for male practice players for the 2025 season. Do you have what it takes? It's right there on the tweet if you're watching on your screen. Tryouts Saturday, April 12th. Less than a month away, out at El Camino College for a couple hours. And here's what's cool. I mean, you can go out there and, potentially showcase yourself. I mean, never mind go out there and dominate on the floor. Maybe somebody from the Lakers or the Clippers will pay attention to. No, not really. You're going to get absolutely hammered out there by these incredible female talents that are on the other side. But if you believe that you've got a prayer, go on out there and give it a try. See if you even make the cut to participate as a tryout player. I want to mention, too, in the world of baseball, there's something similar going on that I think the Miami Marlins are doing. If I remember right, I saw this tweet yesterday that they're inviting people to their complex to basically have an inner scrimmage game against some major leaguers or minor leaguers, people that are actually signed and in that system. But you can, they're looking for retired players, former players, college players that are hopeful, people that just sort of come on, walk in off the street and, again, in a different way, obviously, than what's happening in the WNBA here, but showcase your talent and show that maybe you could get a contract out of it if you impress people enough, or maybe you get a look at the coaching staff or something like that. A guy who is going to be taking more coaching and is finally listening to his coaching there with the Boston Red Sox is Rafael Devers. Devers has apparently agreed to do, quote, whatever the Red Sox want amid news that he could potentially move from third base to designated hitter. Now, if you haven't been paying attention, the drama began basically immediately after Boston brought in Alex Bregman, who is a Gold Glove winning third baseman. Nobody would question Bregman's qualifications there at third base, whereas Rafael Devers over the last few years has been either horrible defensively or last year, let's call him right around average, still not good. And Bregman's signing happens. Devers is asked about it, says, are you willing to potentially shift positions? Because that's what management was talking about. And he said, no, third base is mine. I'm not moving. I'm a third baseman. And then he went quiet and he disappeared. And when I mean went quiet, I mean we haven't seen him. He hasn't even played in a spring training game yet, 2 weeks out from the start of the regular season. Less than a week, by the way, if you're the Dodgers and the Cubs, who get started with the Tokyo series in only a few days. So Devers, in terms of plate opportunities, running out of time to sort of knock off the rust in advance of the regular season because he has been off moping about a positional change when you are supposed to be one of the leaders of this team and incredibly highly paid. Got that fat contract and now might be just content to sit around and literally get fat and happy. The Red Sox, who are kind of a betting darling in the American League this year after Bregman and Crochet and so many these other additions, Walker Buehler, Giolito, these others, of course, on the injured list to begin the year. Devers was sort of failing to fall in line. Now, apparently, he is willing to do so, probably because word got to him from manager Alex Cora and the front office there saying, hey, you don't have a choice. Like, you play for us, you'll honor your contract or we'll find a way out of it. And so he's going to move, not to first base. They have Tristan Casas there. He's going to ultimately be the designated hitter. And you know what? Worked out pretty well for David Ortiz. I think that Rafael Devers can handle it. You got to do what's best for the team in these situations, especially when you're a team that has perennially been in and around last place in recent years. You want to get back to any sort of glory, which you haven't had since 2018 when you went on a run. Still didn't win the title, but at least went on a run. We failed to see a truly competitive, or 2018 they did win. 2021 is what I'm thinking of when they went on a run. But you got to get back. You got to get back to where you were, and Devers needs to be a big part of that. And, of course, sports betting is going to be crazy this month. $3.1 billion expected to be wagered on the men's and women's NCAA tournament, according to the American Gaming Association. For perspective, the Super Bowl, $1.3 billion. 3.1, that's nuts. Let's make some money, folks. Thanks to Frank, to everyone behind the scenes, to all of our guests. I'm Adam. I'll catch you on Game Time.